campus of Volunteer State Community College. This is Inside Politics.
Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Grady Eades. Our state legislature and the United States Congress continue to work on major legislation. We hear about the Republicans' proposals or the Democrats' proposals for health care or creating jobs. But what does it really mean to be a Republican or a Democrat? What is the philosophy of each party? Our guest today is the chair of the Tennessee Democratic Party, Chip Forrester. Thanks for being here today, Chip.
Grady, thanks for having me, and I'm pleased to be in the Hal Raymer Administrative Building here. President Raymer was a dear friend of mine, is a dear friend of mine, and it's great to be back on the All-State campus.
Well, thank you. We're happy to have you. The first thing I'd like to start off with is if you could tell us what is the role of the chair of a state political party?
Well, the first thing is we have a board of directors, which is the State Democratic Executive Committee, 72 men and women who are elected this August to represent the Democratic Party, and the chair serves as the chairman of the board of directors, working with the State Executive Committee to define policy and the state of the Democratic Party in Tennessee.
Okay. Are you involved in campaigning or trying to get the campaigns up or any sort of fundraising for the party at the local levels?
Not at the county levels. Each county party handles that, but we do at the state level, and we sort of help raise money to put together the campaign machinery for the general election coming up this November. And we're also intimately involved in candidate recruitment, helping identify prospective candidates for State House, State Senate, congressional seats in this upcoming election cycle.
Well, just out of curiosity, what is involved in creating campaign machinery or campaign recruitment or candidate recruitment?
Well, there are two things. One is it's essential that we find candidates that reflect and mirror the values of the community that they're coming from. And so that's probably the most important thing that we do in party politics, finding that right candidate for that particular State House, State Senate seat for that community. Then it's important that we have machinery in place, the county party organization that can do the phone banking, that can go out and knock on doors, so that when we have identified that particular candidate, that they can have the party support in the efforts to elect them in November.
Well, you mentioned that the candidate must mirror the values of the community. Are there any larger party principles that a candidate must adhere to, or kind of litmus test kinds of issues?
Well, the Democratic Party really doesn't have a litmus test. We're the sort of broad, big tent party. We have a lot of diverse views within our party. Again, a candidate in Memphis and Shelby County or Nashville might be different and hold some different views than someone in the more rural areas. And it's important that candidate reflect those local community values. But there's some basic principles that really do unite us. Democrats worry about good jobs for Tennesseans. We worry about good educational opportunities for our children, and good health care. And those are the things that really bind us as a party. Worrying about working men and women, equal pay for women in the workplace, and ensuring that everybody can have a good paying job.
Very good. Well, let's use this as kind of a jumping off point for another set of ideas. Is there a difference between being a liberal and a Democrat?
Well, I don't want to be coy in my answer, but it depends what you define as being liberal. If being a liberal is someone who cares for the least among us, the elderly, the young, then yes, we would be defined as liberals. I mean, I think that's one of the key things that differentiates the Democratic Party from the Republican Party. We worry about people who are most vulnerable, those who can't really take care of themselves, the elderly, our parents as they age, and we have an obligation in our society to watch out for them because they can't take care of themselves like they did. Our young, and in particular making sure that they have the opportunity to get a good education so that they can compete in Tennessee and in the world. So those are the things that would define the Democratic Party, and if that's liberal, then we stand accused.
Well, you asked, basically it depends on how you define liberal. Historian Eric Foner defines modern liberalism as a belief in active government coupled with a belief in civil liberties. Would you say that this is accurate?
Well, I think, again, there are many definitions of what a liberal would be. What I would look at and describe as the role of government is, you take a corporation, for instance. A company has a particular responsibility to return value to shareholders. How they do that is really immaterial of rules and regulations. So what watches the company? What makes sure that it doesn't create a monopoly? What makes sure that it doesn't abuse consumers? Well, it's regulation, and that's government. And so the proper role of government is to create a level playing field for corporations, to create, as an example, to create regulations to ensure that the consumer is protected. So that's the role of government in that particular area. That doesn't necessarily trample on civil liberties. That doesn't affect free speech and the right to assemble and the other important freedoms that we have. But there is a proper role for government in terms of creating regulations and protecting consumers and creating a level playing field for all Americans.
Well, what would you say then the role of government is in terms of protecting civil liberties, things like right to vote or right to privacy or even a right to bear arms?
Well, number one, we're a strong, the Democratic Party is a strong Second Amendment party. We believe in the right to bear arms, and we believe that the government should protect that right. We also believe in the government's role in protecting free speech and ensuring, and what's so interesting about it in this quickly changing world of Twitter and Facebook and all the communication tools that are emerging, how do you protect privacy and how do you ensure freedom of speech? And so government has to take a very careful and responsible role in creating legislation for these civil liberties that are important for us as a nation.
How do you find a balance then? For instance, I know that in the Gallatin area we have traffic cameras. And there's been a lot of debate on traffic cameras on one hand are a great way of keeping our roads safe, making sure that people aren't driving through stoplights, the traffic signals. But on the other hand, traffic cams can be used to watch you. We hear a lot of those kinds of things. There's a balance between the regulation and the privacy. How do you find that balance between government being active and protecting its citizens and not crossing into a realm of invading right to privacy?
Well, Grady, that's a great question, and I think what you have to do on the front end is ensure that when government sets up that monitoring system, that there are rules and regulations that don't allow you to spy. And so on the front end, it's important that you create this system that protects privacy. But on the backside of it, it is also important to be able to have that service and that tool. It's very cost effective instead of having a police officer sit there and write tickets, to be able to have a camera doing the work that doesn't cost anybody anything, saves our community money and allows us to put resources into capturing real criminals. So it's finding that balance, and it's not easy, and it's important that we do it correctly on the front end to ensure on the back end that we don't have those privacy violations.
Are there problems with it if you have to come back and add those sort of oversights on the back end? Is that more difficult than making sure they're created on the front end?
Certainly, and you would hope that you would have the sensible approach of doing it right on the front end. But a lot of stuff is changing very quickly in our society, and I find it fascinating when you talk about Twitter and Facebook and what sort of regulations should we have or not to ensure privacy and access. And these are complicated questions in our fast-changing society.
You mentioned earlier that you see the Democrats as the big tent party. What does big tent mean exactly?
Well, one of the strengths of the Democratic Party, and I think the strength of our country in general, is the fact that we are inclusive. One of my complaints or one of my criticisms about the Republican Party is that it's more exclusive. The Democratic Party, we welcome African Americans, we welcome women, we welcome people of different religion and ethnic views, and the Republican Party is a little more monolithic. And I think by having that diversity and being open to different ideas, one, it makes us better as Democrats, but better as Americans in helping solve some of these complex problems. And so we're a big tent. There's some people on the far left that I might not agree with, and there's some people on the far right in the party that I'm more of a conservative Democrat. I'm more of a Tennessee Democrat versus a Massachusetts Democrat. And there are differences in how we see things. But I think that diversity creates our strength and allows us to find solutions for the tough problems that face our nation.